Welcome back to another episode of Single Payer Radio. We broadcast our program from the historic Hayburn Building in downtown Louisville. The show is a project of Kentuckians for Single Payer Healthcare, and we're an affiliate of the Kentucky chapter of Physicians for a National Health Program. We have this program because we believe healthcare is a human right. We advocate for a national, not-for-profit, single-payer healthcare system. Everyone in, nobody out. First of all, we want to thank our listeners and everyone who chipped in last week during Give for Good. You keep our all-volunteer station on the air. Thank you, thank you. The views and opinions expressed on our show are those of the speakers and not the station. I'm Mark McKinley, a volunteer with the group. Single Payer Radio can be heard on WFMP 106.5 on Mondays at 2 p.m., Tuesdays at 7 a.m., and Wednesdays at 11 a.m. If you can't pick up our radio signal, you can live stream us at forwardradio.org. If you miss a show, you can go to the station's archives. Go to forwardradio.org/single payer. Mike?
This is Michael Flynn, a retired surgical oncologist from the University of Louisville. Let me begin with the usual disclaimer that any comments I make represent my personal views and do not represent the views of the Department of Surgery or the University of Louisville. Gene?
I'm Eugene Shively, a retired surgeon from Campbellsville, Kentucky. I've done rural surgery all my career. Again, my views are those are solely mine and not Taylor Regional Hospital or Department of Surgery at the University of Louisville.
We have a special program today. We have three guests who are representatives of an organization called SPAVA, S-P-A-V-A, Society for the Prevention of Aggressiveness and Violence in Adolescents, which is an especially important activity today when you think of all the issues that are going on in our country with the political divisions, all kinds of behavior and aggressiveness in the media, gun violence. I'm going to briefly introduce each of these guests, and then I'm going to give each of them an opportunity to make whatever comments they'd like to for as long as they like, and then the conversation will begin. So let me begin with Timir Banerjee. Tim is a retired neurosurgeon, and as I just recently learned, is also a farmer. He founded SPAVA in 1997 after the Heath High School shooting, and has taught SPAVA principles around this country and Canada. Doris Mann is the SPAVA coordinator. She's a teacher and administrator in education for 37 years in the Jefferson County public school system and private schools, and works with at-risk students. She's been a SPAVA board member since 2015 and a coordinator since 2017. Mark Hudson is a CPA, owner of Strategic CFO Services. He's been a board member since 2010, a treasurer since 2021, and a president since 2019. Tim, Doris, and Mark, thank you all for coming on. We greatly appreciate your willingness to discuss this, and we appreciate the sacrifices and the time you've spent doing something that I think is really important in this country today. So we're going to begin with Tim, let you make whatever comments you make. When you're complete done, we'll give the floor to Doris and then to Mark. So Tim, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. And particularly, I want to start by saying thanks to Dr. Flynn, who taught SPAVA for quite some time, and we appreciate that. And anyway, the program was started after the Heath High School shooting I was at that time teaching in Cambridge, England, and I turned on the computer and I saw that thing happen. And I was very disturbed. So I called Archbishop Kelly and the superintendent of the JCPS system. I spoke with Mr. Maurice Reisner and Dr. Marty Bell. And I said, we are going to give them children awards in the name of Dr. Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi. Those two guys died from gun violence. And so we want to stop gun violence by teaching the children good things rather than doing bad things with the guns, and learning to respect, honor, and have integrity. And we would teach the children by our actions. And that's all it was. And then we slowly started teaching in the different school system classes.
Doris, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, we can hear you. So I'm not sure what happened, but it's your turn. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you. First of all, thank you for letting us share information about SPAVA to your listeners, because it's such a very important initiative for our community, especially right now. I'll just kind of start explaining kind of the tenets of what SPAVA is all about. SPAVA is actually a character development program that supports social and emotional learning, which is a big buzzword in education right now. And it focuses on students learning to use strategies to resolve conflict peacefully. The end goal of all of this is that these students become ambassadors of peace, nonviolence, and hope within their school and their own community. And I think what's really important about this is helping to hopefully change children's lives so that the trajectory into adulthood is on a positive track instead of a negative track. But the Kentucky Department of Education actually mandates character development to be taught in schools. And it's part of it's KRS chapters 156 and 158. And it says that all schools shall develop their students' ability to become a self-sufficient individual of good character, exhibiting the qualities of altruism, citizenship, courtesy, honesty, human worth, justice, knowledge, respect, responsibility, and self-discipline. And using the SPAVA curriculum, when the mentors use that and we're invited into the schools, there's one way to fulfill that KDE mandate, which I think is very, very important. And that idea of character development being taught in the schools has been around since my children were in school, and they're grown adults now. So it's a very intentional way to teach character development. And then the other important part of what SPAVA is the fact that it addresses social and emotional learning. And that social and emotional learning for young people deals with emotional regulation, which that is when the students are learning to understand their own emotions and effectively manage them. It addresses effective communication, sound decision making. So SPAVA supports all of these components of social and emotional learning. So it fulfills what our children and what society needs right now. And children are taught to use strategies when the mentors are in the classes with them. And so I just think it was important for your viewers to really understand what SPAVA itself is as we go into discussing all the other questions that you all had, and that, regarding some of the other components of SPAVA. And I guess, Mark, do you want to talk about the mentors?
Yes, I'll be glad to. I think my connection dropped. Pardon me?
Or anything else.
Yeah, I guess my role in SPAVA would be as a mentor. Timir and I were in a Rotary Club, and I was the president of the Rotary Club in 2005. And I told them once I got done with that, I would be glad to try my hand at being a mentor. One thing led to the other, and I started in 2006. And have been a mentor really at SPAVA ever since. So I've been mostly in elementary schools, some third grade, mostly fourth and fifth grade. Number of schools, South Louisville, mostly in the West End otherwise. And I found SPAVA to be, from a mentoring experience, just a totally gratifying and an amazing experience. And I think one thing we want to get across today is there's been societal changes. COVID came along and I think really kind of changed the landscape for volunteering quite a bit. And quite frankly, we need more mentors. Dr. Mann, she recruits and she exposes schools to the concept of SPAVA. And the teachers say, okay, that's what we would like. And then she's really a matchmaker, matching schools with mentors, but we always end up with more classes that need mentors than we have mentors. So some of the classes go without. And today, I think that's really, from my perspective, that's the concept and the thought I would like to get across is we really need more people involved in this effort. And ours is a grassroots prevention effort as opposed to a remedy. It is a remedy, but it starts at the beginning of these children's lives, as opposed to, basically when things happen and we try to remediate from there. We want to get in on the ground floor with these kids. So as far as my role now, with SPAVAs, it's more kind of transformed from being a mentor into being more, in the admin side, recruiting mentors. I'm also the treasurer and the president. So I've kind of transformed my role a little bit. And but I think what I can say is to anybody who would be interested in mentoring, it will be probably one of the experiences of your lives to work with these young people.
Well, that's great.
Yes,
Thank
and
you
Mark,
all. Go ahead.
I think with what Mark was saying, an incredible experience, and I think Mark and Timir can both attest to this, that it's actually a very humbling experience when you work with these children who oftentimes have been exposed to adverse, conditions in their life. So and when I train the mentors, that's one of the things I always say to them, usually near the end, is you will be humbled by working with these students. And that's just part of that, being gratified with everything. And then also the fact that this is a preventative, as Mark said, a preventative program, being proactive. We want to keep young people out of the pipelines of the judicial system.
Well, I will get back to the mentor issue maybe a little bit later, because I as an ex-mentor, I want to ask you some questions about that. But Gene's going to start off with the first questions.
Are you just located in Jefferson County, or do you have mentors throughout the state of Kentucky?
Mark. Doris?
Oh, all right. We're only in Jefferson County, but if any other county around us wanted to be a part of it, all they would have to do is reach out to us. But the thing is, because the curriculum is on the website, spava.us, any organization or school or church can use the curriculum because it's totally free. It costs nothing. So we are physically confined to Louisville right now, but and I don't know if in the Timir, Mark could answer this. I don't know if we've been in Bullitt County, or we might have been in Oldham County before. I don't know if we have or not.
Now,
I can answer that.
Okay.
Dr. Shively, I can answer that. And that is, see, what happened was we were getting several mentors and we got requests from the other county schools. But the price of gas went up quite a bit in the past. And it was difficult to ask the volunteers to go to different places. I mean, I have taught in schools all the way from Frost Middle, which is almost near Fort Knox, to almost every school in Dixie Highway. And so the trouble was that, and then I taught also in Oldham County. See, the problem is that was finding mentors who would go to different places. And then to do the program in their own community and to give the awards like we had started, they would have to raise their own money, and that became a bit of a problem. And that was and then I went and started taught a lot of mentors up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and also in British Columbia. But that was the biggest problem they encountered, is that they asked me, how are they going to give the awards to the children for their activities? I said, you got to raise your own money. And as you can understand, that became a big Sisyphean task.
So what does the mentor actually do? Does he just talk to the students in school, or do they actually develop a relationship outside of school?
I guess
Doris, you want to answer?
Yeah,
Mark.
I'll take that one. You know, our model is such that we conduct SPAVA in a classroom environment over a 10-week period, and we do develop relationships with the students in the classroom setting, because the program is very focused on the student. I mean, it's kind of a continuum. At the beginning of the class, the mentor will set up the class, but as time goes on through the 10 weeks, the emphasis on the student participation increases precipitously till at the end of the class, the students are doing really the whole class in terms of videos and role playing and that type of thing. But as far as a one-on-one personal mentoring outside of the classroom environment, we don't do that, and we really don't encourage that. We don't discourage it, but we don't encourage it. Would you say that's accurate, Doris, in today's
Yes.
time as well?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
May I just that in some schools, like for example, the detention center, although it's a 10-week program, they, for example, requested me if I would come every week forever. So I actually went there for 5 years. And so the point is, in some schools are different, but in JCPS regular schools, that is a correct statement, because we kind of stayed in that 10-week program like we're supposed to according to the curriculum. But the important thing was, within the program, we taught the children about anger management, and that's an issue, very, very important part of SPAVA. I just wanted to say that.
Let me ask about both Doris and Mark about recruiting. I did one of these programs back in the 90s at a middle school that was behind Churchill Downs, between Churchill Downs and Southern Parkway. And I can't remember the name.
Southern Middle School.
Okay, good man, Tim. And I did it with somebody from the political science department at the University of Louisville. So there are two of us, and we showed up there on I think it was a Wednesday afternoon for 2 or 3 hours. We had a mixed class of, I don't remember the grades. The teachers stayed there for the first couple of times, and then they were gone. So how are you recruiting? I was recruited directly by Tim. I don't remember how this guy from the political science department was recruited, but we really did have it was a very interesting, good time. And I've got a box at home with all kinds of nice letters and things that the students sent, after we finished and moved on. So how are you recruiting mentors? And sounds like you're only sending one, because there were two of us when I did it. way back, well, way back in the 90s. Or
Well,
maybe
Right
I can-
now,
2000s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can comment on that last point, and then I'll let Doris take over the current situation. But when I first started in 2006, and for several years thereafter, I had a partner, and we were known to the students as Mr. Mark and Mr. Rod. And partnering up as a mentor is it's almost ideal, I would say, because you can it gives you a chance it gives the students a little variety in who's actually, kind of guiding them, and also gives the mentor who's not, in front of the class a chance to sit back and kind of read the room a little bit and see, what the students are really grasping, and kind of where we need to go with the class. And then also there's practical considerations where over 10 weeks, if somebody's on vacation or, can't be there, then you've got a, built in, you don't lose momentum in the class by missing a week, because that other person can take it on. But as far as the current recruiting efforts, that's Doris's area of expertise.
well, right now, one of the main ways that we're recruiting, I've reached out to organizations time and again over the years, and they sometimes will say, this is who you contact. So I contact them and never hear from them. And I know that when people are working, they're very, very busy. So Dr. Laura Haynes is on the SPAVA board, and she's a professor at U of L in the psychology department. So we are recruiting mentors from her classes. And then also, and Mark and I, at the beginning of each semester, we go to her class and we do a presentation along with other nonprofits. And then the students have to do 28 hours of service for that semester at that nonprofit. And so that fits perfectly with us, because that means that they're able to go to one class, and that fulfills their 24 hours between traveling and their prep time and then being with the students in the classroom. And we also work with Spalding University and Bellarmine University. At Spalding, we work with the students who are working on their capstone projects, and they need 100 hours of in-service. Then at Bellarmine University, the internship, the student I had last year needed 90 hours. And also we have some mentors from U of L who are doing their internships with SPAVA. I've got 2 this semester, and they each need 150 hours. So that allows those students that are needing 100 hours, like 150 hours with internships, to go into schools and really become vested with those students that they're working with. They work in classrooms, they work with the counselors, and trying to better meet the needs of the kids, the students that are struggling with the social emotional learning and that kind of thing. So right now, we just need to figure out how to, I think, really having more adult mentors that we could pair with the college students would be great, because then we'd have the best of both worlds, the young adults and then the adults with more experience. And oftentimes, because there aren't enough mentors, there's only one mentor in a classroom, and for the mentors, because a lot of these college students have never taught, have never been in a classroom, but they step up to the plate and they do an incredible job. And it's just I don't know. It's been great having the mentors that are doing their internships. So just anybody that would like to volunteer as a mentor would be fabulous.
Doris, have you approached the Greater Louisville Medical Society?
We have yes, we actually have a grant. We have grants through them. And then I think Dr. Banerjee has worked before with trying to recruit some of the the medical students. You have, Dr. Banerjee, haven't you?
Yes, and doctors, and they taught in the program. We have had even one of my neurosurgery residents taught in the program.
Okay. And Well, and the time that I was involved with trying to get some of the medical students involved with SPAVA, the issue that we ran into with them was because their schedules are so unpredictable. They would not have been they said that they would not be able to commit for like 10 weeks at the same time each week. And as Mark stated earlier, that's one of the most important parts of it is that you have that consistent 10-week instruction with the kids. But being there each one of those weeks, you develop a really, really incredible relationship with those kids. So with the medical students, with one going one week and another going the next week and another going the next week, there wasn't that consistency and that ability to build relationships with the students that you were working with in the classrooms. Because so many of the students that are in the classes that SPAVA has worked with, they're oftentimes at-risk kids. And they become very, very attached to the mentors because they know that that mentor comes back just because for 10 weeks and doesn't give up on them and keeps and continues to work with them. And sometimes are not a lot of people in their lives that do that.
Yeah, the medical students are really not good choices because they have so much on their plates nowadays that I just don't see how you could keep that continuation going. But
Right.
I would think that the medical society would be a better option because there are a lot of people that and they've got some free time on their hands to do it. I mean, I was able to carve out the time, and this fellow from the political science department, and as Mark said, it was a good bond that we worked together, and it was good to be able to sit back and see what was going on because when somebody's up there talking and they're all sort of fidgeting and yawning and yawning around, you've lost the crowd. You gotta start doing something else.
I have
Go
a
ahead.
question.
Yes.
Do you continue this every year? For example, do you come and mentor in the 5th grade for 10 weeks and then you come back to the school for the 6th grade, et cetera, et cetera?
Mark?
I'll just just before we get into that point, just a quick follow-up on our previous discussion about the medical society. We were featured in the medical society publication. It was about a year ago, and we did make several contacts with people involved in that publication. So there has been a recent effort there. There were some pictures and quotes from Dr. Banerjee. It's actually quite a nice article about SPAVA. But to your question, the program, once the 10 weeks are over, that's the end of the program. We don't come back with a follow-up the next year. Of course, the classes are completely different. A 5th grader will go from from elementary school to middle school. Doris does have a program or an initiative she's been working on called SPAVA Moving Forward, which is designed to provide more little continuity and sustainability. So Doris, you want to kind of expand on that a little bit?
Right.
Yes.
And
May I interject for 1 second, just
Sure.
to add to our statement that sometimes we have had success in that area. What Mark said is that although we may not have gone to the next class, we have had children, I'm calling them children, they're adolescents, who have actually taught other kids what they learned in SPAVA. So I'm going to stop at that. So there has been some continuity, which one group of children learned, and they have actually said, hey, maybe I would like to try this the way Dr. Tim was in my class. And so they have actually done that, and I've attended that to see that. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. SPAVA Moving Forward. This is what this last year and tried to do it, but it needs more work on it. But what I'm going to do this year is all the students that go through SPAVA in their classes get a SPAVA T-shirt. So what I will work with the administrators in the school that I'm working with, I want them to one day a month have a SPAVA day. And all the students that have their SPAVA T-shirts get to wear their SPAVA T-shirt. And there will be the school or the administrator, along with the teachers of those students, will choose a topic that they will discuss during the day in their different classes. If it's bullying, or if it's, talking about those who are different or better ways to communicate. In all your classes, you could talk about, like if it was communication, even in math class, you could talk about how do we communicate better with each other? Are you listening to your peer that said something over here? So, because research shows that you have to continue teaching something if you want it to stick. So I'm hoping that this will be one way to keep the tenets of SPAVA front and center for these students as they move through the rest of the year. And then what's been interesting is when we're back in schools the following year, I know that Mark was at Kenwood, and those children were, when you go back a second year, and I know when Dr. Banerjee was at Southern Middle School where I was, and he'd come back like the following year, the kids that had had him before always knew him. And I know that the kids that had Mark always knew him when when he went back to Kenwood. And I know when Mark was at Kenwood Elementary, we went to their graduation ceremony for the fifth graders, and the students just absolutely loved seeing Mark again. And they just reveled in being able to talk to him and talk about the classes they had and that kind of thing. So even though we finish, like right now with all the schools we're at this semester, my goal will be to continue to work with those schools in moving SPAVA forward with continuing to educate children about SPAVA.
Now,
Yeah,
go ahead.
if I could make one more point on continuity real quick, is that we will do SPAVA in the fall and in the spring. And what we found over the years is the teachers would request the fall 10-week period because they said, we want these students to have SPAVA, so we get through the 10 weeks, we can have the benefits of SPAVA for the rest of the school year, as opposed to doing it in the spring, and then they not lose, but the kids move on, and the teacher doesn't have the benefit of having SPAVA for the spring semester.
Mm-hmm. So last year at Goldsmith Elementary, they actually, with the first and second graders, they actually had us in the fall and the spring both for the same kids. And because they felt like it made that much of a difference for a fall semester.
Now, for our listeners, can you give us a few examples of how you deal with the issues of violence, and when you're doing it with middle schoolers or primary schoolers? Is it the same kind of process, or do you have to approach it differently when you're dealing with a 7 or 8 year old versus a 10 or 12 or 13-year-old?
Doris, may I go? Doris,
Yeah.
may I just say something to Mike's question? There are a couple of things about, I wanted to make sure this thing about, I was not as good with the smaller children as I was with the middle school, because, some of us can relate a little better. And like, I taught them how to accept difference. Like I told them that, if you look at me, I have a small head and big ears, and I do look a little different. And so calling me a name wouldn't make a friend out of me. Instead, you have to learn to like a guy who does look kind of like me and looks funny. And how do you deal with him? And that, this is an interactive class. This is a very important thing. I like the children to talk, and I give them such examples as to somebody who looks different, and how do you deal with him? Do you sit down when he comes to the school on the first day and make him comfortable, or do you just have in your own little groups and just let him sit by himself? And then I got the teachers involved, and I said, when you came to teach in a school on the first day, how did you feel? And some teachers said they felt horrible, they felt isolated. So, I mean, there was an interaction that I always introduced for the children to participate. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to let Doris go.
Okay, but again, the question is whether how do you do you do this the same way for the younger ones as you do for the middle schoolers? Or if you don't, then
No.
give us a few examples of how you would do it for the younger ones, and how you would, again, approach the violence issue for the older ones.
Okay. Doris, go for it.
You would, huh? Oh, you
I
would
said, you go.
okay, you use different activities for the different age groups. With the little ones, you have to, well, first of all, no matter what age group you're working with, your activities must be engaging and interactive, as Dr. Banerjee just used the word interactive. That's so important, because they don't want to sit back and just listen to you talk the whole time. But with the little ones, you may use a picture book to put your point across. Like, one of the things that this is an activity that my mentors used with first and second graders 3 or 4 years ago. There's a author of picture books. Her first name is Jacqueline. I cannot remember her last name, but when in the picture book, she was talking about kindness, and she said that if you take, as part of the story in the picture book, if you take a rock and you skip a rock out into the water across a pond, what does the rock do? It makes ripples. So the mentors used that part of the picture book and read it to the students. And then I had gotten them these containers and little pebbles that you put in a fish tank. And the students got to drop that pebble into that container to see what it did, and to see that it rippled out. And that if they were kind to someone, they would see that that was the kind of effect it had. Now, an activity like that you could use for an older student also, but some of the activities that one of the things that the older students use and understand is something called a star card. And it's a little business sized card that they get. And you can give this to the younger students, but they wouldn't really understand it like the older students. But STAR stands for Stop, Think, Act, and Review. And you teach children about the fact that there are consequences for their behavior that they choose to engage in. So it's important to stop and to think about it, then, act or not act, and then review, was that the right thing or the wrong thing to do? And I think that that's a very powerful activity, because it's trying to teach children that you are accountable for your behavior. And the older students can certainly understand that. And this star card kind of supports that idea. And again, with the little ones, you have to change your activity probably at least every 10 minutes. Lots of times their classes are only 35 minutes or so. The older students, the classes are 45 minutes. So you're simply gauging your activities toward the age of the student. If a mentor is going to work on empathy, you can do a Google search for empathy and the age you want. And in addition to the activities that are in the curriculum guide, just a plethora of activities come up that you could use. You could do the same thing. If you were teaching empathy to 7th graders, you would put that in, and you have so many activities that would be engaging, again, in addition to the activities that are already in the curriculum guide. So you must meet the needs of the students you're teaching. At one of the schools my students were at, they were in a special ed class. And even though those students, it was a middle school, they had to gauge those activities to students who were cognitively, some of them not at the middle school grade level. So that's one of the things I work with the students, is trying to make sure that what they're doing is engaging, that it's age appropriate. When you're working with the little ones, I dealt with this with the mentor one year. She almost use the language like she was talking to middle school, high school students. I said, I'm not asking you to dumb down the language you're using, but I'm asking you to use a vocabulary that first and second graders can understand instead of a vocabulary that middle school and high school students have already attained. So it's a continual tweaking. I observe classes to make sure that things are going the way they need to go and that that the mentors are using engaging activities that are age appropriate.
Do you have evidence that teaching a 10-week class changes behavior, let's say 5 years later? I mean, how can you change behavior with a 10-week class when a student goes home to a very unstable family where there's a lot of controversy, etc.?
That will
I
take
would like to
a
answer.
long. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to answer Dr. Shively's question one time to explain that 10 weeks will not change the behavior for, I don't believe. But we plant a seed. And I want to make sure that to answer Dr. Flynn's question just before, do you do this violence teaching? You know, in middle school, I have explained to the children, first of all, I've asked them if they have experienced violence. And everybody told me something different kind. So I explained to them there are 3 kinds of violence. One is a word, second is by action, and the third is an economic violence. And many, many families face economic violence. And I give them example. But somebody's father is working and the mother needs money. Sometimes they don't give it because they think you're not making any money. Why shall I give you my money? I said, that's a form of violence. And then I explained to the children very clearly, of course, gun violence or beating up violence. And third is a word violence. And I write down words for them. I said, commonest thing that children get angry is when you tell somebody they're lying. How can you, so kids all get involved. I said, how would you use the word instead of telling somebody they are lying? I'm a doctor. I can explain to you, I can tell somebody they're lying by using a different word. You have to learn to some different fancy words. So I write down the word fracture. So then I write down the word credibility. And they look it up and we understand. I tell them, if there is a fracture in your credibility, what does that mean? It sounds big, but it is not as incendiary as telling somebody they are lying. So that's one. Second, going back to Dr. Shively's question about this 10 weeks thing, it's a very important question. And we have dealt with this. Does 10 week make a difference? I think what it does, that we have had said he received a bunch of letters from the students. We had a student who during award ceremony actually said that my parents were fighting. And this is a little young girl, and Doris will remember her. And she actually said that I told my parents, I don't think we should be talking so loudly. Maybe we can sit down and talk the way SPAVA taught us. I think that's what happens. We have had children who actually told me, because I told them that you must be resilient, because chances are that your parents will get divorced and then you will be used as a pawn to go and spy on the one or the other. And a child who graduated from St. X wrote me a letter and saying, Dr. Tim, you are absolutely right. And I remembered that. And I actually told one of my parents that, I'm just going to go and learn to love them as they are. So I think it does happen. 10 weeks may not create or diminish or completely eradicate violence, but it does plant a seed by which the children think before they act, much like the star card.
Yeah. Yes.
So there you go.
And Dr. Banerjee's point about planting the seed, I think, is so important because I had a mentor at Farnsley Middle School last year. And I know that, again, this was she was still there when this incident happened, but she went to school 2 or 3 days after she had been the last time. And as one of the girls came up to her and said, I just wanted you to know that I almost got in a fight yesterday, but I thought about what you told me about fighting, and I decided it just wasn't worth it. That seed was planted, and there's a good chance that that seed will stay with her forever, and she will remember that mentor that she had that told her that. But to find out the information about 5 years beyond and even beyond that, a huge longitudinal study would have to be done and or conducted, and that would be a very difficult, expensive thing to do. So we don't have that kind of longitudinal data.
I'm going to tell you all a story about dealing with school violence, and after I'm finished, I'm sure you're going to tear your hair out. I'll do it anyway because you can't get your hands on me.
Now you're supposed to be loving.
My son went to a math and science magnet school here in Louisville, which I won't mention. And he was about average sized kid. And in the middle school, there was the issue of bullying. So I went to the school and I went and talked to the teachers, and I realized that they just weren't going to deal with it. I mean, I went down there, I spoke to the teacher in the classrooms, I spoke to the ones in the administrative office. So I figured, I've got to deal with this. So when I was in my early years in college, I was on the boxing team. So I bought a heavy bag and I put it up in the basement, and I showed my son how to throw a punch. And I told him where to hit and, how to defend himself. And I don't know, a year or two later, he apparently got very good at it. And he told me that he was thinking about becoming a cage fighter. I thought to myself, holy, you know what? I created a monster. Well, it was okay. He went to Trinity, and actually he's been a jet fighter pilot for the Navy. Is getting out the end of this year. But I'm just offering this up now. I know this is everything I've read about bullying. It's a terrible way to deal with it, but this seemed to work out, at least for us. That how would you all have handled that situation? I mean, there wasn't any SPAVA thing going on there that at this middle school that I ever knew about. This was, I think, before I was involved in this program in that school near Churchill Downs. So anyhow, curious about
Mike. I'm going to tell you very, very similar. I had, kids have what is called show and tell. So there was a child, I had performed a shunt, put a shunt in her brain. And I drew her a little picture where the tube is and where the tube is in her. Those days, I used to put it in the right atrium and in the heart. So this child came for a post-op follow-up, maybe 6 months later, and told me, he says, this kid's call me Tubey.
Oh.
Because I have a tube in my brain. So I actually went to the school. I talked to the principal and the teacher and in the class. And I explained to them how terrible this child was feeling. I had asked her permission if I could come. I asked her parents' permission if I could come and talk about it. And they said yes. And I went and talked about it. And do you know that the children got up and said they were sorry. They didn't realize how badly they made this person feel. So I think sometimes some of these things work. They didn't call this little kid Tubey anymore because she had a tube in her brain.
Mark had an experience. Go ahead.
Go ahead. That's it. I'm done.
Oh, okay. Mark had an experience also with a student that said that they didn't realize they were bullying, right, Mark?
Yeah, we had a girl in a class, and she was physically she was taller and just a bigger kid than a lot of her classmates. And her name was Joy. And after going through the bullying part of SPAVA, she realized she was a bully. She was physically, she could physically bully her classmates, but she didn't really realize it until she went through SPAVA. And so at that point, when you're part of getting past being a bully is first realizing you're a bully. But to your point on your story, Mike, I think if whatever way you stand up to the bully and basically say, I'm not going to be bullied anymore. If it's we don't endorse violence, but by the same token, I think probably one of the main anti-bullying techniques is just to stand up to the bully. And if this bully, bullies are mostly they're cowards to begin with anyway. So if your son gave them the impression that, hey, I've got a little training here and I'm not going to take this anymore, then that could be very effective without the first punch being thrown. So.
Well, apparently the first punch and the second punch were also thrown, and they were very effective. So,
okay, well, yeah, that's
whatever it took. But
that was probably the end of that bullying situation.
Everything I read about it, suggests that was the wrong thing to do. But I think in this case, it worked out as the right thing to do, and he didn't become a cage fighter. So that wasn't.
Now, how do you distinguish between bullying and teasing?
Oh, I dealt with that. Last year at the school I was the principal at. That the big thing was the new word right now that the kids use in school is they're just roasting each other. They don't use the word teasing anymore. They'll say, well, we were just roasting them. And so I actually, as the principal at the school, went to these classes, and we had a big long talk about the fact that whether you're roasting or teasing or bullying, it's all bullying. And as Dr. Banerjee said, the verbal bullying is the name calling and that kind of thing. It leaves an impression on that person. And we talked about the fact that, first of all, we equated the fact that they are all equal. But one of the points that I made to the kids was, think about how you're making that person feel. But bullying, like when you're verbally bullying somebody, it's kind of like a tube of toothpaste. Once you call that person a name, or once you say something hurtful to them, you can go and say you're sorry, but you can never put that, kind of like toothpaste. You can never take that hurt totally away. Like a tube of toothpaste, you cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube. So adults even have to understand that you can call it a lot of different things to kind of excuse your behavior, but bottom line, it's still bullying.
Well, now,
hold on a second, just we're getting close to the end. I want to give you a 5-minute warning. We're going to have maybe time for one or two more questions, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. So, Gene, go ahead.
So, what about the person who's receiving the bully? There are some people, for example, who bullying doesn't bother them; they ignore it, and there are other people who get very emotionally upset. For example, I know a friend of mine, who it can be obnoxious sometimes. I just ignore him, but other people, they have their feelings hurt. So, do you teach people how to deal with somebody who's obnoxious and bullying you?
Yes, our classes wind up, the culmination of the class is a role-playing bullying situation where there's a bully a bully's friend, there's the person being bullied and their friend. So it's basically a 4-person role. And one thing in an elementary school setting, which is where I've spent most of my time, when this thing's perpetual and things don't work, it's perpetuating itself. The teacher needs to be brought in to the picture. The counselor needs to be brought into the picture to really put an end to this. If it's just a habitual bully and everything else doesn't work, and then we talk about tattletaling and ratting out their classmate and so forth. But in a bullying situation, you just have to bring this to an end. We also talk, and we've brought in some experts on cyberbullying, which is a absolutely devastating feature of bullying in this day and age, and teach the children some skills and what to do in that case. But bullying, I mean, we'll be the first to admit, bullying is it's difficult. In a role play, you can kind of solve it, but some of these bullies are relentless, and they're difficult situations, as we know, with some adolescents actually turning to suicide. So it's a never-ending battle.
As we
Well,
get
yes,
close,
and with bullying, I think with bullying especially, the fact that people that continually bully other people, they've learned to do it very subtly, like in the boys' bathroom where there's not, and the teacher is female and they can't go in there and monitor the situation. Then sometimes the students who are being bullied are afraid to even say anything. So, as Mark just said, it's a very difficult situation to counter.
let me ask you a kind of a little different question as we get close to the end. What is your financial situation? Do you have resources? Do you do fundraising? And like I said, we're getting close, so probably has to be a quick answer.
Well, I better
Mark?
take that one. Our services, we do not charge for them. Our revenue stream is from grant writing. Doris and I, primarily Doris, works on grant writing. Give Good for Louisville was mentioned at the outset. We did participate in Give Good for Louisville. We do need more funding. We are self-sufficient, but I think we would like it if the city, we had some funding from the city that's now gone away. We'd like for the city to participate in our efforts to a greater extent in the future.
Okay, well, I think we're about the end of the road here. Tim, Doris, Mark, I want to thank you all. It was an excellent program. I learned a lot. I'm sure that our listeners learned a lot. Mark's going to take us out, and then maybe we can chat a little bit after the recording's over.
Before we sign off, can you tell us the best contact info for folks who are interested in learning more about what you do and how they might find out about becoming a mentor?
Doris?
Yes. Mark, are you going to talk?
No, go ahead. No.
Oh, if you go to spava.us, the website, my contact information is on there. And just all they have to do is reach out to me through either email or text or phone, either one.
Okay, great. And this is very important info for our listeners. I read an article earlier this month that the U.S. Surgeon General recently called kids' declining mental health the defining public health crisis of our time. So you guys are trying to address that issue. For listeners who would like more information about the program, you can go to kyhealthcare.org, kyhealthcare.org. If you'd like to contact the chairperson directly of Kentuckians for Single Payer Healthcare, you can go to nursenpo@aol.com. It's Kay's direct email address. That's nursenpo@aol.com. For Single Payer Radio, I'm Mark McKinley. Thanks for listening.